Today, Mom and Dad.
We've been married 62 years.
62 years. So 1963. 1963. Oh.
Read what?
Started the Historical Society in 65.
Oh. And the reason we got married on March Day, because that's an ugly month to get married in.
Tell Haley that.
Yeah, I agree. That's right, yeah. Just that he'd just gotten home from a mission and he wanted to get married. And so he said in 4 weeks we're getting married.
Wow.
Wow.
We did, 4 weeks after he got home.
And what kind of weather was it that day? Was it a yucky, blustery March day, or was
No,
it nice?
It was nice and sunny on that day. And then we drove down to Provo. And so I think we got married on a Friday. Or a Saturday, I think it was probably Friday. Anyway, then there was a big storm on Sunday night. And we got up on Monday and I had to drive him to school at BYU and stop at the grocery store on the way home, and I got lost because the road signs were all covered with snow.
So you got married in Idaho Falls, but he was already going to school in Provo?
Uh-huh. Yeah, he just took the weekend off to get married. Because he'd already started a couple of weeks late in the semester.
Because he had just got home from his mission. What else do you remember about the wedding day?
The wedding day, I'm 86.
It's got to be something.
I remember that we had to be down there by like early
Early in the morning.
6 or I think it was
Wow.
like 6.
And were you driving from here?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, from here,
Oh.
from Rexburg.
Yeah.
yeah. And of course, our parents, drove us down, but I just remember it was very early.
We didn't drive down together. I don't think we
And
did.
did we do a session? I don't know. No, we didn't do a session. You just went early. Yeah, because what you did in those days was you usually went a few days or a few weeks beforehand and took out your endowments. Then on your wedding day, you just went and were sealed. And that was all. And then we went for lunch at Scotty's, what's it called?
Pancake House.
And who else was there?
Well, our parents, Marilyn and Larry, Marcia and Don were in Hawaii. I think Ray and Mary were there.
Jim Powell. Was my best
Friends.
friend.
Was he like your best man,
Best man.
if you had one?
Pauline, Anne.
No,
No,
not to
they
the
were
temple,
too young.
They weren't endowed yet.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was probably all that were at the temple. But I remember John, so probably Colleen and Anne and John came for the dinner, the lunch later after the temple.
The biggest disappointment was our photographer, who was my cousin Tommy,
Tommy.
and he forgot to put film in the camera.
Oh my gosh.
And that was for the wedding and the reception.
Oh,
But thank
Wow.
goodness we had pre-pictures taken.
So those were like a week ahead of time
Yeah.
or something? So you had lunch at the Pancake House, and then where was the reception?
In the First Word Chapel, the old church that before your time.
The old rock one.
Okay.
And the line was clear out the door and
Down the hall.
Down the hall.
Down the hall.
Wow.
because we came from 2 different ends of town, and so we had
the whole
All
town
Rexburg.
there.
had the whole town there.
I bet.
Popular people. Yeah.
Wow.
Circle again.
And
Well,
then where'd you honeymoon? And what'd you do after?
We honeymooned all the way to Provo, Utah.
Did Dad just pick out an apartment, or had you?
We had some friends, Carla and Philip Ricks, that were living down there in a house that had another apartment in the same house, and they told us about it. So we took it sight unseen.
Oh.
But we stayed the first night in the, I think it was called the Sandman Hotel. Do you remember? That's not
On the
right.
south end of the Idaho Falls.
And I had the receipt, and it was $65 a night.
That
Or
does
maybe
make
it was 35.
I think it was more like 30.
I would say it had to be
Yeah.
35, 65, you
35.
could probably find a dump for that
5-star
today.
hotel.
Yeah.
My dad gave us a car for
Oh,
the wedding.
what kind of car was it?
Wow.
It was a 1950 Chevrolet.
And he just had a new paint job on it. It was bright blue.
Ooh.
That's a legit gift.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They made it down there.
We sold it a few years later, put a sign on it in our front yard, and sold it to the Mexicans for $50.
It's funny.
So you spent your first, how long in Provo?
I was a senior in my either second semester or third quarter. It must have been second semester. When I got a call from the superintendent of schools here in Rexburg, asking if I wanted a job.
Wow.
And
That's
at that
amazing.
time, I'd been thinking, "Now I gotta go to these job fairs and find some school district. So we took it
So you said sold.
quickly. And then I had a professor, I can't think of his name now, and he was kind of adopted me. I mean,
Hathan.
Hafen, yeah, went out of his way. And he convinced me I should go on and get my master's. So he came back for a year to school to get the master's out of the way.
But in that first year, so we were married in March, and we had Brad the next February. Supposed to be in January, but he didn't want to come, so it was February. And then we came home for that summer. So we were just there a year that one time, and then we went back
For
for
another
a year
year.
and got his master's.
Because you've done several, I mean, a few years of school.
Yeah, he was a senior.
before your mission, right?
He was a senior.
I was in
Oh,
3.5 years of college before I went on my mission.
oh, yeah.
And of course, I've always credited my patriarchal blessing for my mission. Because when I was, when he interviewed me before I got my blessing, he said, "What's your feelings about a mission?" I said, "Not for me. I'm not cut out for a mission sort of thing." So he's giving me the blessing, and he's going along, and all of a sudden he just stopped and paused. And he said, "I feel like I need to say that you're going to serve an honorable mission." Then he went on with the blessing. My faith in the gospel and everything was such that I figured if he said it, I had to go. So I wasn't the ideal candidate, because I still had reservations. But when I got out there, I did what I told the people to do. We were instructed as part of the mission, our mission goal was to tell them, pray about it, attend church, read the scriptures. So I did, and my testimony came.
What are some of the highlights or just some of the memories you have of your early married days, either in Provo or back here, or some of the hard times or hard things that you went through in those really early years?
One of the first Christmases in Provo, I mean, the first one together, I thought it was as neat as could be that she convinced us that instead of buying Christmas cards, we should make them. And I remember walking across campus, picking berries and leaves.
Holly leaves.
Oh, how fun.
She glued all together for Christmas
Wow.
cards.
And you made these beautiful cards, you glued them on, and then you put white glue and put tissue on over the top of it. And it was all misty.
Wow.
Pinterest doesn't have that one.
And I think the edges were torn.
That's a fun memory.
And then when we found out she was pregnant, we sent a letter home with just a picture in it of her sitting on a chair with a dish of ice cream.
Pickles and pink ice cream. That was our announcement.
And my dad got it right off.
And why was that a thing? Just that when you're pregnant, you have weird cravings?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't know about your parents.
I'm thinking that your parents got it and mine didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, I think mine had to be told what that meant. Oh, no, Marcia or somebody looked at it and told them that's what it was.
There is a story on the engagement ring, and not the wedding ring.
Oh, yes, we need that story.
Yeah. Engagement ring.
I wrote home and told Dad I needed some money to get a ring, because we had a member of the church that worked in the diamond mines in South Africa. And he arranged for it and sent it in the mail, because he couldn't get it in time for me to bring it home myself. And it got there like 2 days before the wedding.
No, a week. So he comes home without the diamond. He's arranged for his companion to mail the diamond when he gets it. Gets the red tape. It was getting it out of the country, wasn't it, that held it up?
Well, I think it was mining it too.
Oh, mining it. Anyway, so here we are. I'm wanting to go show off a diamond that I don't have. And it came a week before, and we had alerted the post office. When that diamond comes, you let us know. Don't just deliver it. Anyway, it was a week before we get the call from the post office that the diamond is here.
I'm in Provo.
Yeah, he's in Provo. My dad was in town, and he always would call Mother and check in. What do you need me to bring home, you know? So we
How?
told him to go to the,
How did he do that?
he had to stop at a phone
Oh.
in a
booth?
store somewhere.
Oh, in the store.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably in Johnson Drive where he was getting his Coke. Oh, yeah. So we told him to go to the post office. So he came home with the groceries and with my diamond unset. This was a week before the wedding and it's not set. And I'd been working at Grover Jewelry here in town, and you know, I knew they would take care of me, but they didn't have a setting that would hold that diamond in stock. So he told me where to go in Salt Lake at a wholesale jeweler. So then we still had to make the trip to Salt Lake, drop the diamond off. It took them a few days to set it, and then I can't even remember how we got it back, but I got it like 2 days before the wedding.
We lived in this apartment, 2 or 3 stories. We were the top.
We were the top. It was 3, counting the basement.
And we had stairs out the back that went down. And so while we were waiting for the baby to come, Kurt and Brad, every night I'd go out and plug the car in, because we wanted to be able to get to the hospital.
In February.
That was right down in the area where you lived.
Uh-huh. Kind of like our first apartment.
Yeah, it was an old house. It was a lovely old doctor's house that had been converted into 3 different apartments.
A million miles from campus. In fact, our tabernacle was the temple, the Provo City Temple.
And same with us. That was our.
Yeah, our stake.
Mm-hmm.
Our stake went to church in that tabernacle.
Yeah, that's where we had state conference.
Uh-huh.
Did you walk to school, that's why it was 1,000,000 miles from school?
No,
Oh.
for my master's degree, we lived 2 blocks, 3
Oh.
blocks. I walked in.
But the most embarrassing thing that ever happened was that one day while I was pregnant, I had gotten a job on campus working in the academic standards office one day. I just stood up, I was standing in the doorway talking to my boss, and I just fainted dead away, just like he did the other night. So they called the campus, I don't know, EMTs, whoever they were. So they came up and insist on taking me out on a stretcher. And in the administration building, you BYU people know it has this big winding staircase. Well, the stretcher wouldn't fit in the elevator, so they had to carry me down the staircase. And then when we got to our apartment, I knew that the front door was locked. And so we went up these crickety old back stairs that he's talking about that opened into our bedroom. So here they carry me up the second flight of stairs, opens right into our bedroom, and I hadn't made my bed that day. That's why I nearly always make my bed as soon as I get up. I was so humiliated.
Ann Landers, would have had something to say about that?
Yeah.
Is that the right one?
She was when you wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dear,
Dear Abby.
Yeah.
that's funny.
What did you guys like to eat in Provo? Was there any good? Could you afford to eat anywhere?
We didn't eat out, did we?
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't have restaurants to eat out
Yeah.
in those days.
Yeah.
We went to the show,
Mm.
Went to movies, got off.
went to the movies about once a week.
Because I remember getting so I couldn't sit and I'd stand up during the movie, go stand in the back.
And was that on campus somewhere
No,
that you'd go?
it was downtown.
So you had Brad move back to Rexburg, lived.
Second
Little
East.
On the hill.
house By
Little house on
Shelley's
Second
mom.
East.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's now a big apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
And our friend in the 4th Ward came to us one day and said, "You need to build a house." And I said, "I'm a school teacher, I don't have any money." He said, "You don't need any money." He was from home administrator.
He said, "Can you get property?"
Yeah, he said, "Well, yeah, we can get property. Your dad offered to give us the land." He said, "That's all you need, that's your down payment." So we borrowed $19,000.
And we had $1,000 saved up for furniture. We thought we were riding high. $1,000.
And we had that 1,000 was our insurance policy.
Oh yeah, that we cashed
We
in.
cashed in the insurance policy and had $1,000.
Wow. Mm.
So we painted and refinished and recovered and made curtains and
You totally skipped Sean. Cause you're coming up on me being born. So Sean was born.
that's right. We skipped Sean while we were in the little house on Second East.
That's right. And was Dad at the junior high?
First 2 or 4 years.
Two.
Two.
I think you were only 2 at the junior high. And then a spot opened in the high school.
And
Junior high at that time was in the old red brick building.
I coached football in the junior high. I had the 9th grade team. He came to me and said, "I want you to coach." I said, "I don't know anything about coaching. All I did is play." I said, "That's all right." So I went over and watched the varsity practice, and then I would do what they did. Whatever they coach, I did. But I had 2 special plays. One that was illegal. One that was legal. The illegal one was I had 2 guys substitute in and 3 go off. And the third one that went off stayed on the field. And just kind of stood there on the field like this. Then when they hiked the ball, they threw him a pass. The referee came up to me and said, "You can't do that." We scored the 1 touchdown.
Oh.
And the other one was an onside kick where I had the kicker. He could throw his foot behind his other foot and trip and fell down, and then the next guy to him went and kicked the ball. And we recovered it several times. But my best play of the whole season, 2 years that I coached, was playing St. Anthony. And they had a guy that I swear was from the Reform School. He was big. He was big, and he terrorized my line. And nobody wanted to line up against him. I mean, he was mean. And he had them all. And in the third quarter, I complained to the refs all the time through the first half how bad he was, and that he was hitting them and stuff. And so I had alerted the ref. I went to the worst player on my team, who was there just because I let everybody be on the team. Said, "Do you want to be the hero?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Go out there, line up against this guy, and as soon as they hike the ball, hit him. And lay down and cover yourself." And he did. And the guy jumped on him, and they threw them both out of the game. And we went out and trumped him.
Is that a good note to end on?
No way, we're not ending. What year was the house built?
68.
68.
Yeah, Kristen was born.
Oh, so 10 years old at the flood.
Yeah.
Time of the flood. So,
No,
Not quite.
No,
76.
oh,
76. It was 8 years old.
okay.
So I had to change my first diaper.
Because I'm lucky to be alive. Kristen was babysitting me.
So tell us something one of the things that you loved about each other early on. What was one of the things you fell in love with each other about, or something that you loved from each other early on?
Well, technically, I'm very shy. And when I got to know her, I didn't care about anybody else. And then if you look at her pictures in high school and later,
I fell in love with him because he was so thoughtful and considerate, such a gentleman, and he was very, I felt like he was very strong in the church, even though this was before his mission. He was just a good guy. So I fell in love with him.
And then one thing that you love about each other now, so something that's evolved or changed in 62 years.
I think we're much stronger now, communication-wise. We make decisions together, and that's really made our marriage grow.
Okay.
I agree.
One thing that was really hard to live up to is our parents never fought. Never fought in front of us.
It's just not in our nature.
Oh.
Interesting, you look at some kind of seems to be in families, tempers, and none of us have a quick temper. We're just all kind of laid back, are we?
But you marry people.
Excuse me.
John sees me.
Whatever.
But you marry people that are different.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that's a big deal.
It comes like you watch people, someone dies, And there's family fights.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
Oh, they might surprise us.
Well, it didn't happen with
Just
your
'cause he said
family.
No, my siblings are the same way, we just get along.
And mine haven't, we didn't have anything to divide.
What's something when you've had hard times? What's something that's helped make you stronger or get through together?
I think one of the hard times I think of all the time was when the bishop came to us. I was the finance clerk. And they decided to build the North Stake Center and assessed all the families and said, we need $1,000 from you. $1,000 in those days. I mean, I'm a school teacher. And we looked at that together and thought, how in the world are we gonna come up with $1,000? But we ended up being one of the first ones in the Lord that did it. And it brought us together, and of course Sean and Brad did a lot of worm working.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, what did you do? But I do remember doing worms. What do you mean?
I do.
What is that?
I remember that,
What's worm working?
or at least
Gathering
later.
night crawlers in the water at John's
They would
house
get
in the-
great big garbage cans, but you put something in it special, didn't you?
Chemical.
Filled it with water and then something that, I don't know, suffocates and you dump it over the lawn, and then all of a sudden, all these worms would come out and you'd have
Oh,
to
well,
pick them
first
up.
of all, the grass was flooded with water from the canal. That's how they watered the lawn at John's house. So you're walking in water about this deep, yeah, and then they put something in the water
And why do you want to pull all the worms out?
And then you sell them for like fishing.
to, yeah, they're big night crawlers.
Where would you
They're
would you
about
sell
there.
them? Where did you sell them?
Wow.
Ooh, that's gross.
Yeah,
That's
that's
gross.
Roadside stand in front of Lauren's house.
They did it
Oh.
in coordination with Alana's
Yeah,
brothers.
they did it too.
And they lived
They-
right on the
course,
highway, so they
yeah.
could put a sign up.
We gathered and they sold, isn't that how?
Oh, wow. What's your
Can you
memories
imagine
of
how
that
much would you
time?
make?
Well,
Yeah.
the memories of hard times you're talking about was probably through the 70s when both of our dads got cancer and died within 4 years of each other. And I had 4 miscarriages at 5 months. All just one thing right after another. And I just remember thinking that I've read about people who, when hard times come, they lose their testimony and they get mad at God, thinking, why me or something, and I just never felt that way, so it was just faith, testimony of the gospel, and got us through.
And I feel like whenever you guys talk about the flood, you never talk about it being super hard or devastating. I just feel like you always talk about people rallying together and people helping one another, meaning the 70s and all these other hard things that happened too. That would be pretty devastating.
Yeah, that was in that same time, that was 76. That decade of the 70s was a lot of hard things, but
there was a bright
also
spot.
a happy time. I mean, I look back
Just skipped
on
right
it
over
as
that.
being a good time.
The year 1975 was a little rough, but
There was a bright spot there.
Bright spot.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
but when 78 hit, then things were looking up.
Yeah, things like
But then, I can't imagine when Sean and Brad went on missions. Well, when Brad went on his mission, that's when you went back to work, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wasn't his $600 a month back then?
I don't remember.
600?
That's a lot for back then.
It was a
But
lot.
in Hong Kong, you paid what the mission price, and he was one of the high ones.
But wouldn't
And we
Philippines
knew
have
that
been?
Sean would be going before Brad got home.
Oh.
It was
And
gonna
then-
be Bing, bing, bing.
And then you had Marlos
Yeah, and then we
live
had
with
Marlos
you
that
in
lived
there
with us.
for a year or two.
Yeah. So I got this job at the creamery. That was the first time I saw Jerry. we were buying a new used car, the white, was it a Cutlass?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cutlass Supreme.
What?
Cutlass Supreme.
Cutlass
Got the
Supreme.
Oldsmobile? Yeah.
Well, we were trying it out. I had driven it to work, and Brad and Jerry came to look it over for me, and that was the first time that Jerry was in the creamery.
Marlowe's was something different,
Yeah.
because I was at the museum. We were celebrating one of the centennial things, the Buffalo Barbecue. It was going on in the parking lot. And he came down the stairs, and so I talked to him for a few minutes and found out he'd come from Brazil. And he came,
He'd just gotten off the Greyhound bus.
just got off the bus, and his bishop had told him, his branch president, "You go and the Lord will provide." There he was.
There it was.
We were
And
out
I
there
remember
Friday.
just going, are you crazy?
That's-
This kid's just gonna come home with us? He's like, he has nowhere else to go.
Do you remember that?
Of course, at
I
that
feel like I
point,
vaguely
You can
remember that.
imagine what
Yeah.
he thought.
Yes.
He's gonna
my
bring this
gosh.
kid home and say he's gonna live with us for a.
Well, we
We
didn't
thought
know
it
that
was.
yet, but so the next day, I took him up to Rick's College to get him into school. That's when we found out that he had no money. We didn't realize that before. He had no money, and he couldn't get into Rick's College because he had no credit. He didn't have a high school diploma. That's when it began to dawn on us, I guess. We got this kid. And he was a great kid.
Mhm.
Crazy.
It was good.
So how did he get into college?
He didn't. He went to
So he went to
the
Madison
high school. He had
for
to
a
be
year.
a senior.
Graduated, and then I managed to get, I helped get, Judy for All Seasons, what's her name?
Virgin.
Norma.
Virgin, yeah. They gave him a scholarship one year that paid for his, not only his schooling, but his housing. And so then he moved into town into an apartment.
So was that 2 years that he lived at home?
No, just one, I feel like. He only had
It's
to
like
do
a
1
year and a
in
half
high
or
school.
Yeah.
something.
okay.
Probably one
But
or
Brad was on
And
his
you were
mission.
gone that
I
whole
must
time,
have
or
been.
you
No, he was
You were
home.
there.
So,
Sean was
Yeah, he
there.
was
How old
there
were-
when Brad
were
got
you a
home.
junior?
What was your thoughts on Marlo?
No, I feel like
You didn't like him? Is that what you said?
I feel like Sean. I think weren't you like a senior? Because then I was a freshman, maybe. And then you got to be seniors together. No.
He was.
I don't remember.
Sean was
Because
avoiding.
you wouldn't have had anything to do with it.
No. But that's why I think Sean was a senior.
Did he ride to school with you all the time?
He probably went early with you or something.
Yeah.
He went with you. How quickly we forget.
He played a mean game of
And so
categories
Sean was
before
a
we knew
Yes,
what
before
was.
categories, yes.
Yeah, it's got to be something like
And
that.
was it before him or after him that we had Stacy?
Oh,
Stacy. That was Sean,
Wait.
Leslie, Kristen's. Kristen's trial and then Sean's trial.
yes.
Yeah.
But Stacy was at least 3 or 4 years.
Now, we had her for 5, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, it was a
Does
lot.
not
We
seem
had her
like that
for 5
long.
years.
And that's another thing. If it wasn't for the church, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Marlos wouldn't have happened without that theme of what we should do.
Say Stacy
Yeah,
probably wasn't a success story, but she wasn't a failure.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she didn't. One of the Palmers, or there was somebody in Utah that was cousins to somebody, or did Mary and those guys? No, Mary. They had somebody.
Mary
that
had one that was a real success.
went to
Still-
college and married a guy
Yeah,
and
still
got
lives
off the
in the
res.
area and still in touch with them.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, as a teacher now.
Yeah.
Yeah, ours wasn't that big a success.
But probably much better than what her life would have been like there during those years, obviously.
Oh,
But she
yeah.
always remembered, cause you know, she'd keep in touch with me and she came out.
Yeah.
We gave her money for a bus ticket one year and she came to see us. Brett
Timmy.
took Timmy around, yeah.
But we think she's passed away now?
Sure she did. While we were in Russia.
Oh. And you know for sure?
No, not
I just
actually,
assumed.
but I knew before I left that she had cancer.
Oh.
He told me that she had cancer
Oh.
at that time.
Marlos went on to become a doctor.
Yeah.
He did, didn't he?
Up
I
in-
think he also went on to become
Washington.
gay.
I wasn't gonna say that. To become.
Yeah, he did. I wonder how he ever did that, how he had the money to do that. He must have gotten scholarships.
But we have not heard from him for many, many years. But wasn't he Portland or something? Area?
Washington or Oregon.
Washington?
Yeah.
I heard he went back to Brazil. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, he went back. And then his sister called us one time, I would say 10-ish, 15-ish years ago. And she was in Utah, and he was visiting her.
Oh.
And she wondered if I had Zoom, if we could,
Oh.
and I didn't at the time, I didn't have it set up on my computer. So anyway, I talked to him on the phone
Wow.
a little bit that day, and that's the last we heard of him. And she told us then that every year he took her and the parents, I'm not sure if the father was still alive, but whatever siblings and family he had, he took them all on a trip to Europe or somewhere, so he was making good money.
Well,
Interesting.
I just assumed he probably left the church and was too embarrassed to stay in touch with us.
What was his last name?
Palma.
but he was married for a while.
Yeah.
I think we were pen pals.
Yeah, we'd have to look at pictures to remember how old we were with him. I just remember.
Believe that was like a year and a half, but Stacy was like 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't really even remember Stacy, just that she was mad at me. So I stayed out of her way, I think, but
I can't imagine how hard that would be. You know, you have her for the school year and she gets used to how we live,
Ugh.
our rules and everything, and then whoosh, she leaves for
Yeah.
the summer and comes back and you start all over.
yeah.
And I remember that first year, she was behind her grade level.
Mm.
And I just thought, oh, we'll work hard with her, we'll have her up to grade level by the next year. And we did. We all had to help her with her homework and we worked hard. But then we realized she had fetal alcohol syndrome. She didn't catch up, buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's amazing. I mean,
A young, I don't know if she was a widow or divorcee that was in our ward. And she had a little daughter named Kristen that was just your age. Do you remember what her name was?
Pam?
Pam, I think it was. Anyway, we took her under our wing and I just remember tending that little girl a lot.
We didn't bring her to our house. I mean, she didn't live with us, but it was like
Handle
being a home teacher,
mm.
Oh,
big time.
big time.
That was our first take in, I guess.
Wow.
Take her.
I think you're young with 3 little kids, just be like my kids' age, you know? 3 little kids, these guys are.
A little bit hard because I was a finance clerk. Bishop Walker was chairman of the county commissioners, so he was put in charge of the whole recovery. His first counselor his job didn't get hurt, and his house didn't get hurt. And so he had a job.
Because he was at the site.
He worked out at the site. The second counselor was a builder. And the minute the flood was over, he was building. The clerk was Doyle Walker. They put him in charge of food services at the college for all of the recovery. There's the finance clerk.
So he was the acting bishop for the summer. He'd go to the,
Bishop said, you go to the meetings in place of me and report and do what you're told.
go to the church house every morning and meet the buses and direct the volunteers where to go after we walked around the ward the first night after the flood or a few days after the flood. Determined who needed what, and then we'd send people out.
So I'm doing that, and she's out at our place with all the garbage and stuff.
Sean and Brad were shoveling mud out with wheelbarrows
Although we did go to the church quite a few times,
and help mind the store.
hang out with Dad there.
Besides directing
The
people,
whole room full of stuffed animals. Whole classroom full of stuffed animals.
Oh, the people donated or
Uh-huh.
something.
I don't remember that part.
I came home
Kristen
with a
does.
purple pig.
Oh.
There was one room just inside the door that was the store, and it was full of mops and buckets and cleaning supplies and, you know, rubber gloves and.
At the church building now,
At the church.
because it was brand new.
Yeah. Uh-huh,
And
it's
how
brand new.
did it not get hit?
Because of, go ahead.
The doors were sealed, and the water came in the air conditioning units that had outdoor vents. But one of the trailers from upstream came down and hit about halfway up the building on the north end.
The corner of the building, so here's the
Diverted the
building.
water
and
right around it.
And no water
Hit
came
like
in
that.
from up there. The only water that came into the chapel, and the gym floor was flooded.
No, the gym floor wasn't flooded.
Oh, that's the high school.
No, we
Yeah.
worried about the gym floor because it was brand new. The only water that came in were in a couple of the classrooms on that side of the building. And just came in just a little bit.
Wow.
But it was
Because that trailer
a lot of
diverted the water.
area.
Yeah.
Diverted the water.
But yeah, it's not like it was on the hill at all, and so that just seems crazy that it wouldn't have had a lot more.
Yeah.
The government, after they decided they were gonna reimburse everybody had to sit down and write your losses out. I mean, write them out, detailed as you could. And then the government sent a representative around to each of the wards to go around the ward and verify that that really had been listed. And I had to go with the guy that came to our ward. So if it said there was a fence here, he'd say, was there a fence? I'd say, yes, there was a fence. Got out to our place. And I told him, you know, this is not my house. Here's my list. And he went around and looked at things and he said, you need to add $500 to this. I said, no, we pretty much know we lost all this. You're gonna forget things. Put an extra 500.
500 seemed like a lot of money at that time.
Yeah.
What do you remember about it, Sean?
I remember playing in the mud, sleeping in the camper out there. It's awesome.
How about throwing,
Sleeping in the camper when?
The nights we stayed out at the house, slept in the camper shell in the back of the pickup.
His room was destroyed.
My BB gun.
And then
But-
later you went out collecting insulators.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but the fun part was we got cases of RC Cola, which was gross. And we'd line them up on the hearth and throw screwdrivers at it. Which I was a mere 8 years old, so you know it was him and Brad. I was just
Is
lost.
that why that hearth edge was so bunged up?
Use that as a place to hold board on a sign several times.
48 years later.
What do you remember of when they said, like when you heard it was happening and you had to get out and go? Do you remember that?
My dad saying he had to get outside and dam up the.
Sandbags or something?
But wait a minute, do you remember what you were doing first, when we first heard?
I was outside playing.
You and,
Somebody come ripping in a pickup.
yeah, but you and Brad and Dad were over by the corral trying to figure out how to throw the boomerang Grandma had just brought back from a trip to Spokane.
Oh.
She had a boomerang, you know, you're supposed to be able to throw it and then come back.
Yeah.
So that's what you were doing, and I was planting flowers in the corner when Aunt Mark called us, and I guess Kristen answered the phone.
I'm done. I don't think so, because I had walked halfway over to Grandma's house, because I was supposed to be going to Deborah's house, Madsen. And the more I walked, and the closer I got, the more scared I got of her dad. And I thought, I'm too scared of her dad. So I went home. Or I would have maybe been at their house.
Wow.
Unless Sean was in the house and Brad was throwing boomerangs, but I don't think
Oh,
so.
we were throwing boomerangs.
But somebody, so then it would have, no,
It's not
it would
me.
have been Kimberly.
It's not
Somebody
me.
was in the house and got the phone call from Aunt Mark.
Hope somebody was watching me at some point.
Came out and said, Aunt Mark
Must
said,
have been taking a nap.
we're gonna get a flood.
The dam broke and the river was coming down the canyon.
We still
So-
didn't think it was a big deal.
No, it
No,
wasn't a
that's
big
when they
deal.
started putting
I put that much dirt
in front of the
door.
back door.
Then we brought the
Door.
TV and all our coats upstairs.
Well, that was after we sent her in to, I asked her if we had anything, if we had enough food to last, we'd be cut off from town because the river runs between. And she said she had stuff ordered at Safeway. So she went in town to get it and they wouldn't let her back out. So she called from Grandma's house and said, they won't let us out, so we said, we'll meet you up on the hill.
Yeah, they were announcing on the radio by then.
Right,
Come to
so-
Rick's College.
Sleeping bags and coats and her cosmetics.
Important stuff.
All my makeup. So I went to church the next day in my grubby clothes, but I had makeup on.
That's a good husband to grab your makeup.
I know it.
Were you devastated when you went back and saw your room was totally gone?
Not really. Our room just had
2x4s.
2x4 walls anyway.
That was an adventure, I
Big
think, for the
adventure,
kids.
Wasn't that? But your hot dog maker or something?
That would go.
That was gone.
I think, did you and Brad walk out with us that first day? I remember that I wore Dad's big boots, what do they call them?
Galoshes.
Gators.
It's with my shoes on inside his boots, clumping along, and do you remember this, walking out? There was only a
narrow board.
Yeah, a board across the river bridge. There's
Oh
two.
my gosh.
There was two before. And then we walked out, and we just saw on either side of the road there was houses that were gone, and it was like the last day on earth.
Oh.
And there were people walking back from Sugar City that had been out to their houses. And, you know, they were just walking back so forlorn. And it's just all gone. And there were railroad tracks that were clear out in the field and abandoned.
And I'm sure dead cows. There's a lot of dead cows
We
around.
didn't see any dead cows at that
So the
time.
cows there washed downstream from us.
And in Doyle's restaurant.
Yes.
And Doyle's what?
Restaurant.
Yeah, Doyle's restaurant was
We
gone.
did
But it
pass,
had a dead cow,
Cows.
right?
Oh, yeah, a dead cow.
we did pass some of our neighbors that told us our house was still there.
Oh.
But we knew it was there because we could see it. I had my
See it,
binoculars
yeah.
up on campus.
You must
I
have.
remember standing, I remember
Wind
at
up,
8 years
This
old,
pass will get us, if you wanna go back in Monday.
standing at,
It's like a
where's
technically
at the
24
Manwaring Center and looking out in those binoculars.
binoculars.
You couldn't see anything, but it was just dust. You know, so you
A
couldn't
wall of
see.
dust coming.
Yeah.
But you must have held it together pretty good for these guys not to have memories of.
Yeah.
Not to be
You've been
traumatized.
devastated.
Oh, yeah. I think we held it together because
Very well.
everybody around us was in the same
Together.
fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was a trial, they recognized as a trial, and
Y'all sweaty?
make do.
Worst scares was standing up there on the college, watching the water go by, and somebody mentioned everybody's gonna have to get tetanus shots.
Somebody
John was saying, "Oh no!"
Dad just got his booster a couple days ago.
From the flood, since the flood. I think that was a little overdue.
I think we've had one since we didn't know when.
We had one before we went to Nigeria.
I'm sure missions you had one.
That's so long time ago.
Yeah, we did.
But I remember the
Last year,